Your papers now, immigration check.
I'm a police lieutenant, Phoenix PD. My badge is in my truck.
Sure you are. Everyone's got a story. Show me documentation proving citizenship.
My name is Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, badge 2847. Call my precinct.
We'll verify that downtown.
The Shell station on McDowell Road was packed when it happened. Tuesday morning, 9:47 a.m., the kind of desert heat that makes asphalt soft and turns steering wheels into branding irons. Lieutenant Marcus Hayes had stopped for gas on his way home from an overnight shift, still in his civilian clothes, basketball shorts, a Phoenix Suns t-shirt, sunglasses against the glare. He'd just finished pumping when three IC agents approached from a white government SUV he hadn't noticed pulling in. Their body cameras were rolling, recording what would become the most expensive gas stop in Arizona history. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, you need to hit that subscribe button. Stories like this don't get told unless we tell them, and your support means these videos reach people who need to see what's really happening out here. Agent Todd Brennan led the approach, his partners Agents Valdez and Kim flanking wide like they were corralling livestock. Hayes saw them coming, read the tactical spacing, the hands hovering near weapons, the body language of men who'd already decided he was a problem. His cop brain cataloged it all in the second it took them to close the distance. Federal agents. Immigration and Customs Enforcement patches visible on their vests. Looking at him like he was prey. He knew where this was going before Brennan opened his mouth. Afternoon. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We're conducting a sweep of this area. Need to see identification and proof of legal status. Brennan's voice carried that particular bureaucratic flatness, the tone of someone going through motions they'd repeated 1,000 times. Hayes took off his sunglasses, made sure his hands were visible. 23 years on the force had taught him that sudden movements around armed cops got people shot. I'm a police officer. Phoenix PD, Lieutenant Marcus Hayes. My badge and ID are in my truck. He gestured toward his F-150 parked at the pump behind him. Everyone says there's something, Brennan replied, not moving, not letting Hayes move. Got any documentation on you right now? The way he said it made clear he didn't believe a word. Hayes felt anger spark in his chest, the familiar burn that came from being treated like this in his own city, wearing his own team's jersey at a gas station he'd stopped at 100 times. My wallet's in my back pocket. My badge is in my vehicle. I've been a Phoenix police officer for 23 years. If you call my precinct, they'll verify. We'll verify everything once we've established your identity and status, Brennan said, which was icy speak for you're coming with us whether you like it or not. I need you to provide documentation now, or we'll have to detain you for processing. Valdez had moved around to Hayes' right side, Kim to his left, the triangle formation tightening. Hayes recognized it immediately, containment tactics, the kind you use when you think someone might run or fight. Except he wasn't running. He was standing at a gas pump in broad daylight with his hands visible, trying to explain who he was to federal agents who'd already written their own narrative. My ID is in my wallet. You want me to reach for it? Hayes asked, his voice steady despite the situation spiraling. He'd been on the other side of stops like this, knew how they could go wrong, knew that reaching for anything could be interpreted as reaching for a weapon. Slowly. 2 fingers. No sudden movements, Brennan ordered, his hand now definitely on his weapon. The 3 body cameras captured Hayes moving in slow motion, pulling his wallet from his back pocket like he was defusing a bomb, opening it to show his driver's license. Arizona license, his photo, his address in Glendale, issued and renewed, completely legal and current. Brennan took the wallet, examined the license without much interest. This doesn't prove citizenship or legal status. I need a passport, birth certificate, naturalization papers. Something that establishes you have a right to be in this country. The words landed like a slap. Hayes had been born in Tucson. His father had been born in Tucson. His grandfather had been born in New Mexico when it was still a territory. His family had been American longer than Arizona had been a state. I was born in Tucson. I'm a natural-born citizen. I'm also a police lieutenant. My badge is in my truck 15 feet away. Let me show you. You're not going anywhere until we've verified your status, Brennan said, pocketing Hayes' license, which was technically theft but would be described later as securing evidence. We're going to need you to come with us for processing and verification. Processing, Hayes repeated, his voice hard now. You're detaining me? On what grounds? What reasonable suspicion do you have that I'm here illegally besides the color of my skin? The question hung in the hot air. Around them, other customers at the gas station had stopped, phones coming out, witnesses materializing the way they always did when something felt wrong. A woman pumping gas 3 spots over had her phone up, recording. A man coming out of the convenience store had paused, watching. Should federal agents be allowed to demand citizenship papers from anyone without reasonable suspicion? Comment below, because what happened to Marcus Hayes could happen to any of us, and the only thing separating law from tyranny is the question we're willing to ask. We're conducting an operation in this area based on intelligence about illegal employment, Valdez spoke up, his camera recording Hayes' expression, the controlled fury barely held in check. We have authority to verify status of individuals we encounter. Intelligence, Hayes said. So you saw a black man at a gas station and decided to demand papers. That's your intelligence. That's your reasonable suspicion. Brennan's jaw tightened. Turn around. Hands behind your back. You're being detained for verification of legal status pending. Call my precinct. Hayes interrupted, not moving, not complying, not giving them what they wanted. Central Precinct. Phoenix PD. Ask for Captain Williams. Tell him you've got Lieutenant Marcus Hayes detained at a Shell station on McDowell. See what happens. Turn around, Brennan repeated, reaching for his handcuffs. That's when Hayes made his decision. He wasn't going to make it easy. Wasn't going to be walked into their vehicle and disappeared into the federal system for however many hours it took to sort out who he was. He planted his feet, kept his hands visible, and used the voice he'd developed over 2 decades of command. I am not resisting. I am not fleeing. I am invoking my Fourth Amendment rights. You have no reasonable suspicion to detain me. You have no probable cause to arrest me. I am a Phoenix Police Department lieutenant, and if you put your hands on me without cause, you are committing assault on a peace officer. The words came out crisp and clear, projected for the cameras, for the witnesses, for the record. Brennan hesitated. This wasn't the usual response. People they stopped usually complied out of fear or confusion, usually got in the vehicle and sorted it out later. This guy was citing constitutional law, claiming to be a cop, making a scene that was being recorded by multiple phones. We have authority, Brennan started. You have authority to stop people with reasonable suspicion they've violated immigration law. Hayes cut him off. What reasonable suspicion do you have about me? What specific, articulable facts made you target me at this gas station? Because if the answer is I'm brown and buying gas, that's not reasonable suspicion. That's racial profiling and you know it. Kim moved in from the left, trying to grab Hayes' arm. Hayes took a step back, hands still up, not aggressive but not allowing the contact. Don't touch me. I have not consented to any search or seizure. You are violating my constitutional rights, and it's being recorded from multiple angles. The standoff lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt longer. 3 federal agents surrounding one man, customers watching, phones recording, morning traffic passing on McDowell with drivers slowing to see what was happening. Then Brennan made his decision, the wrong one, the one that would cost the government $13.9 million. Subject is resisting detention. Secure him. They moved simultaneously, Valdez and Kim grabbing Hayes' arms while Brennan went for the handcuffs. Hayes didn't fight. Fighting would have gotten him charged with assaulting federal officers. But he didn't help either. Dead weight, arms tense but not pulling, forcing them to manhandle him into cuffs while he continued speaking for the cameras. I'm not resisting. I am being assaulted by federal agents without reasonable suspicion or probable cause. My name is Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, Phoenix Police Department, badge number 2847. I am a United States citizen. This detention is unlawful. The cuffs clicked around his wrists, tight enough that he felt circulation cut off. Brennan's body camera recorded the process, recorded Hayes' face, recorded the moment a 23-year police veteran was treated like a criminal at a gas station for pumping gas while black. They walked him toward their SUV, past staring customers, past the woman still recording, past the man on his phone who Hayes heard saying, "Yeah, they're arresting some guy, I don't know why, he says he's a cop." "My truck," Hayes said, craning his neck to look back at his F-150 still at the pump, keys in the ignition, badge and service weapon locked in the console. "My vehicle is unsecured. I've got a weapon in there." "We'll handle it," Brennan said, which meant exactly nothing. They put Hayes in the back of their SUV, the cage separating front from back, the space that smelled like fear and sweat and the dozens of people who'd sat there before. The body cameras recorded him sitting there, hands cuffed behind his back, face set in controlled fury. Then Brennan made a phone call, his camera recording his side of the conversation. "Yeah, we've got a subject detained for verification. Says he's Phoenix PD but no badge or ID visible. Detained at Shell on McDowell?" "Right. Yeah, we'll bring him in." He ended the call and climbed into the driver's seat, Valdez riding passenger, Kim in the back keeping an eye on Hayes. They pulled out of the gas station, leaving Hayes' truck at the pump, and headed toward the ICE field office. In the back seat, Hayes spoke directly to the cameras he knew were recording. Approximately 10 a.m. Tuesday morning. I have been detained by ICE agents Brennan, Valdez, and Kim without reasonable suspicion or probable cause. I am Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, Phoenix Police Department. I was born in Tucson, Arizona. I am a United States citizen. This detention violates my Fourth Amendment rights. Everything these agents are doing is being recorded, and they will answer for it. The ride took 28 minutes. Hayes spent them silent after his statement, breathing slowly, controlling his anger, running through what would happen next. They'd process him, eventually verify who he was, eventually realize they'd screwed up. The question was how long that would take and how much damage they'd do before admitting the error. At the ICE field office, they parked in the secured garage and walked Hayes inside, still handcuffed, still treated like a detainee. The intake area was busy, other people in various states of processing, agents moving with the efficient boredom of bureaucracy. They put Hayes in a holding room, a 10 by 10 cube with concrete walls and a metal bench. "Someone will be with you shortly," Brennan said, removing the handcuffs. "Don't suppose you want to make that phone call to my precinct," Hayes said, rubbing his wrists where the cuffs had left red marks. "We'll verify your identity through proper channels," Brennan replied, which meant they'd take their time, follow procedure, cover their asses before admitting they'd messed up. The door closed, and Hayes sat on the metal bench in a federal holding cell, a police lieutenant with 2 decades of service being treated like he'd just crossed the border illegally. He'd been in rooms like this before, on the other side interviewing suspects, working cases. Never thought he'd be sitting on this bench. An hour passed. Then 2. Hayes could hear activity outside, agents talking, phones ringing, the machinery of enforcement grinding through its daily routine. Nobody came to talk to him. Nobody explained what was happening. Just silence and waiting and the growing knowledge that somewhere, someone was about to realize they'd made a catastrophic mistake. At 12:43 p.m., 3 hours and change after the gas station stop, the door finally opened. A supervisor, judging by the rank insignia, followed by Brennan looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Mr. Hayes," the supervisor said, his voice carefully neutral. "I'm Agent Supervisor Martinez. There's been a situation. We've verified your identity." "You mean you finally called Phoenix PD and found out I am exactly who I said I was?" Hayes replied, his voice flat. "Lieutenant Marcus Hayes. 23 years on the force. Born in Tucson. Natural-born citizen. And you detained me for 3 hours because I was pumping gas." Martinez had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We followed procedure for verification of status. You're free to go. We'll arrange transport back to your vehicle." "Procedure?" Hayes repeated. "Your procedure is to detain American citizens without reasonable suspicion? To ignore when someone tells you they're a cop? To leave their vehicle unsecured at a gas station for 3 hours?" Silence. What could they say that wouldn't make it worse? "I want copies of all body camera footage," Hayes continued. "I want the names and badge numbers of all 3 agents involved. I want a formal incident report. And I want to know what reasonable suspicion you had to stop me in the first place beyond being brown at a gas station." "You'll receive all appropriate documentation," Martinez said, which was bureaucrat speak for "we'll give you the minimum the law requires. Again, we apologize for any inconvenience." "Inconvenience?" Hayes said softly. "You handcuffed a police lieutenant and detained him for 3 hours without cause, and you're calling it an inconvenience. We're way past inconvenience. We're into federal civil rights violation territory and you know it." They drove him back to the Shell station in uncomfortable silence. His truck was still there, somehow not towed, still parked at the pump where he'd left it. Hayes checked his console. Badge still there, weapon still secured, nothing obviously disturbed. He stood in the parking lot for a moment, breathing, processing, deciding. Then he got in his truck, drove straight to the Phoenix Police Headquarters, and walked into Captain Williams's office still wearing his basketball shorts and son's shirt. "Marcus, what the hell?" Williams started, then saw his expression. "What happened?" Hayes told him. Every detail. The stop, the detention, the 3 hours in a federal holding cell. Williams listened with a face that went from concern to fury. "They detained you? For what?" "For being brown. That's it. That's the whole reason. No reasonable suspicion. No probable cause. Just 3 IC agents who saw a black man and decided to demand papers." Williams reached for his phone. "I'm calling the chief. And you're calling a lawyer. This is beyond department business. This is federal civil rights lawsuit territory. The lawyer Hayes hired was Amanda Torres, a civil rights attorney who'd built her reputation suing federal agencies. She listened to his story, requested the body camera footage under FOIA, and within 8 weeks had enough to file a lawsuit that made the Department of Homeland Security's legal team blanch. The footage was damning. 3 angles showing Hayes being stopped without cause, detained without suspicion, handcuffed and transported despite clearly identifying himself. Audio capturing his repeated assertions of citizenship, his badge number, his request that they verify with his department. And their refusal to do so until after they'd processed him through their system. Lieutenant Marcus Hayes versus United States of America, Todd Brennan, Luis Valdez, Jennifer Kim. The complaint alleged unlawful detention, false imprisonment, violation of Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable seizure, racial profiling, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The evidence was attached in hundreds of pages of exhibits. Body camera recordings, witness statements from the gas station, phone records showing Hayes's location, his service record with Phoenix PD, his birth certificate proving citizenship. An airtight case of wrongful detention. The government offered to settle within 4 months. $75,000. Torres sent back a one-word response, no. They came back with $300,000. Still insulting. Your agents detained a police lieutenant for 3 hours because he was brown, Torres told the government attorney. You ignored his identification, his badge number, his constitutional rights. We're going to trial, and a jury is going to make you pay for every second of that detention. The trial started 19 months after the gas station stop. The courtroom in downtown Phoenix was packed every day. Off-duty cops wearing their uniforms in solidarity. Civil rights organizations. Community members. Media from across the country covering what had become a symbol of overreach and racial profiling. The body camera footage was played on day 2, all 3 angles synchronized. The jury watched Hayes being approached, questioned, detained. Listened to him identify himself clearly and repeatedly. Watched 3 federal agents ignore everything he said and handcuff him anyway. When the footage ended, several jurors looked angry. One was shaking her head slowly, her expression disgusted. Hayes testified for 9 hours across 4 days. He walked the jury through his career, his service record, his commendations. Described the humiliation of being detained at a gas station he'd stopped at hundreds of times, in his own city, wearing his own team's jersey. Explained the fear that ran through his mind. Would they believe him? Would this escalate? Would he become another name, another hashtag? I've been a cop for 23 years, he told the jury. I've made thousands of stops, hundreds of arrests. I know what reasonable suspicion looks like. I know what probable cause requires. Those agents had neither. They had a brown man at a gas station and that was enough for them. Everything else, my explanation, my badge number, my rights, none of it mattered because they'd already decided I didn't belong. The defense tried to argue the agents had acted reasonably based on their intelligence about illegal employment in the area. Torres destroyed that argument in cross-examination of Brennan. Agent Brennan, what specific intelligence did you have about illegal employment at that Shell station? We had general intelligence about the area. The area. So not that specific station. Correct. And what about Lieutenant Hayes's behavior or appearance made you suspect illegal employment? He matched the general demographic profile. Demographic profile. You mean he was brown? That's not what I said. But it's what you meant. Because nothing else about him, his clothing, his vehicle, his behavior, suggested illegal employment. He was pumping gas. So what exactly made you target him? Silence. The jury watched Brennan struggle for an answer that wouldn't sound like racial profiling. The jury deliberated for 8 days. When they returned, the foreman read a verdict that electrified the courtroom. Guilty on all counts. The damages phase took another 12 days. The jury heard about Hayes's nightmares, his hypervigilance, his inability to trust federal law enforcement. From his captain about how the incident had affected his work, his relationships with other officers. From a psychologist about PTSD and the specific trauma of law enforcement officers who become victims of the system they serve. When the jury announced damages, the courtroom went silent. $9.4 million in compensatory damages. $4.5 million in punitive damages. Total, $13.9 million. Brennan, Valdez, and Kim were reassigned to desk positions. The field office supervisor who delayed verification was demoted. The Department of Homeland Security issued carefully worded statements about ongoing reviews and policy clarifications, avoiding any admission that systemic problems existed. Training materials were updated as part of regularly scheduled revisions. Nothing that acknowledged this specific case had revealed fundamental failures. Hayes stayed with Phoenix PD another 3 years before retiring early. He used part of his settlement to fund a legal defense organization for people detained by immigration enforcement, providing free attorneys and documentation assistance. The gas station stop became a cautionary tale, taught in police academies and law schools as an example of how assumptions override evidence, how profiling destroys lives, and how even badges don't protect you when bias decides you don't belong. If you believe citizenship shouldn't require proving yourself at gas stations, that reasonable suspicion means something, hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories coming that show why documentation matters, why cameras save lives, and why sometimes the only justice is a jury willing to say enough. Because in a country where a police lieutenant can be detained for being brown while buying gas, all of us are one stop away from having to prove we belong in our own home.